Nitish Mutha, the co-founder, CTO of Genie AI. Welcome to the Vertical SaaS Podcast. Great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's been a while trying to get this one in due to the graveyard of illnesses that are going about in the UK at the moment. But yeah, it's great to have you on. Looking forward to covering your story up to now at Genie AI, talking about everything legal, tech, AI in the space. And before we jump into that, Nitish, for those that are listening that don't know who you are, do you mind just giving us a bit of a background as to who you are?
Yeah, surely. I am Nitish, CTO and co-founder at Genie. Prior to Genie, I was an engineer back in India. Grew up there, worked as a software engineer. But I was always interested in AI back from 2010 when I was undergraduating. And that's where I kind of started to build my career towards that direction. And back in 2016, I finally decided to kind of leave my job in India, come to UK, do my master's degree at UCL. That was a really great experience for me, learning experience, because not just because I was learning a lot about neural networks, large language model then, but neural networks, deep learning. But also we were lucky enough to be taught by researchers from Global DeepMind, D2 association with UCL. And I think that was really great experience for me because very quickly within a year's time, I was like right at the cutting edge of the technology with all the knowledge. And that helped me kind of build this company called Genie AI. At Genie AI, we build legal tech software for businesses so that anybody can think of becoming a lawyer and then do contract review, contract creation, negotiation of their contracts all by themselves.
A great thank you for the intro. I mean, you never messed around. 4 years at a job and then straight into starting Genie. And you've described Genie AI. You know, we'll get into what it is in a bit more depth, of course, down the line. But I've got a small world anecdote. Somebody that I spoke to, that we have a connection in mutual, this week said that it's a friend's wife of mine, and she used to run the Barclays Ventures Lab in Notting Hill, and she was the lab manager, and she knew Rafi really well. I think it was organising a lot of pizza and alcoholic drinks or something. I don't know, but yeah, that was take us back to then. So quickly, kind of going into a bit more depth about what Genie AI is. There's a lot of noise in this market that you're in, and taking us back to those really early days. So Barclays Ventures, was that the entrepreneur first cohort on your LinkedIn, or was that before that?
Yeah, that was after Entrepreneur First. So that's where
Was
we
it?
started the company. And then we were lucky enough to be part of Barclays Eagle Labs. So we were there for a couple of years as part of the program, uh,
Mm.
the program they had. It was fun, a little place in Notting Hill. Back then, it was quite different, I would say, like pre-LLM era, where
Mm-hmm.
building an AI product, completely different game, like such a time-consuming effort just to build a simple single like feature. I'll take an example of like we wanted back then we were building a feature to compare clauses. So like if you have a contract, you want to see what other alternatives exist for this particular clause, how best I can negotiate. And just to build that, it took us good around 6 months doing proper machine learning to kind of build our own models where we can do similarity search, rank those clauses from our clause bank. So parse the clauses, do similarity search, deploy these models into some environments, have some evaluation, and then go live and then maintain those models. And that was like quite a bit effort. And how magically now LLM just takes away all of that pain. And then within a week's time, you pretty much have a functional prototype, which you can put that into production as well.
Mm.
So things have been a lot more different in terms of how fast we as a company can move.
And what in those early days, because Genie AI is a mature startup, you know, that's how I would probably describe them in where they are. 8 and a bit years now, 2017. Back then, almost no one believed AI could touch legal work. Like, what kept you guys going? Like, when almost to say no one back then probably, it was very taboo, wasn't it? Back then, AI, legal work, it was like, no, these are two separate things.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think back then I don't remember any other company as we see in the industry right now, where as pro AI, as original AI approach as we set out to be.
Mm.
And that was very interesting take of our take on the industry, especially Rafi and I not having any legal background.
Yeah.
Maybe we were naive enough to kind of think that this is possible. But certainly, I think there were like a lot more challenges in terms of complex engineering and machine learning challenges to be solved.
Mm.
Back then, we were focused more on more usual path, as in helping law firms be more efficient by serving law firms and improving the way lawyers do work by assisting them. But as years pass by, we realize uh, the ultimate value is in providing this sort of capability to every business person or commercial teams where they are owning these contracts, um, where they have to kind of accomplish a certain business deal and then get contracts signed and exchanged. The actual owner of a contract. And we thought deep down that's the user we have to help and support. That's how we transform our product from initially being focused at lawyers. And back then it was hard sell because lawyers had like really high expectations in terms of the quality it has to
Mm-hmm.
achieve. And now, fast forward now, our shift and pivot to in our market where we are focused at, which is more end user, more business user. But at the same time, it's a different challenge because we have to now make it contracts a little bit more understandable for end user,
Mm.
giving them understanding of where the risk lies, giving them support where if they don't have enough legal understanding or understand legal terminologies, how can they still provide their instructions or provide what they would like to do, what they would like to see in a contract, and then translate that into a legal wording of a contract. So product has evolved a lot and changed a lot. But I think with LLMs, I think there's been a lot more magically possible to do certain things which were unimaginable back then.
Before we get into, I guess, what was technically impossible pre-LLMs when you were building back then, why build Genie AI at all? Why, with no legal domain expertise, you could have built anything for any industry. What was it that just at that time when legal tech or AI legal grade point solutions, again, it wasn't a really hot space? Yeah, I'm just curious as to how, because that's such a topic in itself, is domain expertise more important now more than ever, or is it not? But back then, I'd probably say back then it wasn't as relevant. I'd say now it's more important to have it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think back then, I think we had some unique advantage or maybe disadvantage. But the advantage was because we are not lawyers, were not already processes were not fit into our minds. Like we are able to think relatively easily out of the box and then question every single ways of doing things. I mean, while law itself, I think both Raf and I, during our master's thesis, specialized in generative adversarial networks, which is GANs. Back then, it was the popular advanced state-of-the-art machine learning technique to kind of create text, which now is kind of transformed to LLMs. So that was fresh out of our university. We did theses on it. So we kind of knew what the power of AI was there back then in terms of creating text. We
Mm.
sort of were trying, when we were at Entrepreneur First, we were trying to figure out how we could best utilize our understanding of cutting edge technology to a really burning problem. Turns out we had like lots of legal friends in industry. So we just kind of started to call them up and ask them a bunch of questions and trying to really understand what are the struggles, like how they work. It turns out there was a lot of repetitive work they have to do. And even lawyers are really overworked and stretched right up till like 2 a.m. trying to read through lots of text when they have to kind of review contracts, when they have to negotiate, try to go through single paragraph multiple times and trying to figure out best possible provision to safeguard their client's interest. So there's a lot of manual labor, manual work, a lot of hard work goes into it. And all of that is like some sort of kind of relatively easier things for machine to do and offload it to machines. So that was our kind of initial kind of spike
Mm.
insight that there's something here where there's a lot of repetitive work, a lot of time is invested in doing low-level work, which even lawyers don't really enjoy. And we can remove a lot of that pain, take away that pain from lawyers. And then it is beneficial for lawyers for their own mental health, their workloads. At the same time, pass that on to the clients because then they probably might be able to charge less or do more work in the same amount of time.
Hmm.
So that was our initial insight where we kind of started to lean into this, apply our technological brain uh, over legal space. And again, the legal space is so organized in terms of at least everything is documented, everything is in written form. It's got a set structure in terms of contract. So it was a good place to start with, where everything is documented, very structured documents, which are repeated over a period of time. There's a set standard. There's laws around it. It was like perfect problem to kind of use and then build business around.
Hmm. I feel like the legal spaces went through that in spades. You know, the initial thinking that we should be developing this for lawyers only, but really it's like, well, no, in law firms, like it's for really anyone in a legal team. It's not just for the lawyer. It's actually for any business that has a legal department. And I feel like the whole industry in the last 10 years has went through that shift, and we're now on the latter part of that. It's any enterprise business with any legal team. It's almost not even legal tech now. It's just tech, you know?
Yeah, exactly that. I think we thought a lot around that, and then we are actively trying to make our lives harder to kind of really solve for that sort of target customer. But I do feel like the end user here is like a business person who is running the business.
And then figuring all that out, and then we get up to, let's fast forward quite significantly to 2022 when LLMs came out, ChatGPT. I guess the point I'm trying to get is to why now, because you made a very big raise from Google Ventures and Khosla about 3-4 months ago. So why now? Because did you guys bootstrap the business in the beginning?
Yeah, so I think we initially got funded by Entrepreneur First, just like a small amount of
Small amount, yeah.
funding. Yeah. But then from there, we kind of built a prototype. We got some of our early partners, like big law firms, to kind of trial up our product.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of gave us the traction we needed, like to validate our product. And eventually that attracted more venture capital funding. That kind of ball started rolling for us. But along the way, we did pivot into a separate industry. But that was just the nature of how we were reacting to the market and the problems we wanted to solve.
And what do you think shifted? There's a lot of people raising money right now for products, myself included. So we're all trying to think deeply about our industries and the problems that are inherent in there and how AI can fix these problems and save us time. And it's all, for me, it seems to be time to value at the moment, certainly in my industry. How much can we reduce that? Conversations back then when entrepreneur first, when you're maybe raising like a couple of 100,000 to now raising 13.5 million with GV and Khosla, like what shifted, do you think? Compare your first check to now, like what was the due diligence like then versus now? What kind of questions did you notice you were being asked of now? Because building vertical AI versus building vertical SaaS is, the whole economics is just, it's totally different. And I think it's always interesting to get a bit of an insight for people that have raised in 2025 for an AI solution like you guys.
Yeah, I think I can share some of my personal experience on that.
Yeah.
So back then, when we initially got our pre-seed funding from Connect Ventures, it was primarily on like founders, like how inspired founder are to solve certain problem, or how motivated they are, what sort of ideas they have, sort of vision they have in mind. It's pretty much at that level. What investors are looking for is like, I'm investing into a great founder, and then are they going to kind of make this business successful or give enough returns for the risk we are taking? So back then it was completely based on that. But as you grow as a business, for our last Series A round, overall discussion was around the growth, how fast we are moving in terms of how fast we are growing, how much of user base we are attracting, how valuable is the product, which of course relates to revenue as well. I think it's all about growth right now. Like if the company's on like some sort of exponential growth in terms of number of users, number of revenue, amount of how rapidly they are growing. I think that was the key indicator for us to kind of, for GV probably to invest into us. And I think that continues to be the case where now looking forward as well, we are aiming ourselves to kind of grow as rapidly as possible, be the de facto technology for businesses to, when it comes to legal, when they want to automate their legal work with the help of agents.
When you existed for 6, 7 years, you go and raise the money. I mean, were you being asked questions around like, because you're in a very competitive space, you know, Harvey, Luminance, Robin, like did Google Ventures not say like, what's different, guys? Like, what are you doing that's different? And that's the same question that I think everyone building an AI solution will get asked now. You know, how can this not be repeated? Where's the defensibility at scale? What's different about the 5, 6, 7 other vendors in this space that are also doing this, Nitish and Rafi? You know, like, was that a difficult question, or was that a question they were asking at all?
No, I think that's a really good point. I think you picked up on, like, I think the success like Libera or Harvey had in a very short period of time. I think they chose an industry which is kind of craving for that sort of solutions. Like they are focused on law firms and in-house legal teams, like who I think of that they are the primary people who are more close to this job function. But in our case, we strategically felt like maybe make it harder for ourselves to kind of go beyond the normal expected end user, in this case, lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of made it ourselves in a way to kind of be a bit more visionary and then think beyond, like, can a product like this be used by a non-lawyer person, non-legal expertise, and still do kind of legal work all by themselves? So that, I think, bold vision kind of attracted GV to do an investment. But at the same time, our approach was quite different from all others in the industry. We are pretty much product-led company, so product-led growth. So we are very open in terms of giving access to a product. Like all you have to do is just go to our website, sign up, and then start using us at the very minute. Versus with all those other companies, it is like a long procurement cycle. You have to bring up a sales team, set up demos, have a trial, and the the pricing strategy is quite different. It's quite expensive software for to use Harvey or other products. So they are primarily focusing on enterprise, but our strategy has been like, let's go from bottoms up. Like let's start from like bottom end of the market. Yeah, small to medium sized companies and people who have got like need to do legal work by themselves and then climb up the ladder from there. So that has been our unique angle. So we are trying to be as horizontal, as global as possible from day one, which was another probably interesting perspective, which got GV's attention.
It's interesting that point you raised there, because I think it's really synonymous of the time actually that we're in terms of what users should we target. What's our quickest way to market? What TAM can we dominate, and then how can we expand from that? And how are we going to translate adoption into usage? How can we track that? Because if you're working with these big 10,000 people law firms, I mean, I'm not going to say the name, but we all know who I'm talking about here. The user feedback from a very loose article online suggested that the ROI and usage was like as little as like 30% across a lot of companies from lawyers. And so it's effectively that what they were saying is that day to day we're using point solutions like ChatGPT and Claude, like they're using it on their systems, their desktops, but it's not linked up to it's not ingrained throughout the strategy in the business. They're just using their own personal ChatGPT to get shit done. You know, it's like there's still no real strategy so they'll adopt like a Harvey or a Legora or something, or any legal tech you want to mention, and it's like that's just the first part. You know, just integrating is number one. Like, how do you guys track that?
Yeah, I think fortunately we have different problems to solve in this case. Like we have very high intent when user comes on Genie. They're already looking for drafting a legal agreement, reviewing a legal agreement, and they find us from organic sources like from our website to Google search to kind of asking ChatGPT. So they already have a good need to use us. And we've managed to position ourselves in those kind of channels. So people auto discover us. And then from there, the journey is very friction free. Within minutes, you start to get on the system and use it. We hardly see that sort of adoption issue because we're not operating in an industry where somebody
it just sits
has
there
decided.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's very natural and organic need. So it's kind of emerging from the need versus a company has decided as a strategy that we can use AI, deploy AI, and then everybody in our firm have to use AI because there's no enough buy-in. Maybe at individual level, people have to believe that this sort of solution is going to help them out. So our strategy has been like, yeah, let's organically reach these users, customers, and they will try the product for free. They will get the value in it. We also give a lot of free value out of the product. So they take a lot of free value out of the product. But as a result, we then manage to convert them as more ongoing users because as you run a business, it's not that only once you have to do legal documents, you have to constantly kind of do various agreements as you expand your business.
Another one question I wanted to ask you as well was, and I think it every day with the product that I'm building at the moment, and again, it comes back to defensibility at scale. Do you have advice for people that are building AI solutions today? You're thinking about a pain that exists in their industry, they're doing what you guys did, and they think they can go into this industry with fresh eyes. How should someone be thinking about building something that is not just a UI GPT wrapper, like because it's a question that I get asked right now when I'm trying to raise funds for something I'm building. It's like, how could somebody else I'll just go and build that? And for me, it's the question of, well, it takes a lot of time and it actually takes a lot of money because it's very data intensive. So that's my reasons. But do you think there's things to watch out for in terms of when you're starting off building an AI product, even down to the stack, the foundational model that you choose to do so, or not really?
Yeah, I think to answer your first question, I think it is a really good point, and I think it's something we actively are thinking about, like what is the moat, what is the defensibility, how we can kind of stay relevant, stay ahead of competition. I think there are a few open thoughts in mind. I don't know whether they are going to stay relevant in the future as the world is going to transform. I think having access to kind of data is probably one of the key moat. Well, like as ChatGPT, people are still using ChatGPT, but all the people who are using Genie at the same time, that sort of data is very valuable. Which if we can make use of that data to give anonymous, private insight about market standards to our customers, so that I think that creates some sort of moat we might be able to provide, and maybe ChatGPT is not yet able to provide that sort of analytical data on what's like norms in this industry for this type of document. That's one. And another one I think is just branding and distribution. So I think there is some sort of trust which gets built up when a lot of people are using the solution like Genie. I think that sort of branding is probably one important distinction which makes people assure that okay, the system I'm using is built by trusted people who are there in the industry for a while. They know exactly what they are providing value, and they are
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, if you think about in our world, in AI worlds, that branding at the core of that should be trust.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it should be trust and the ability, and beyond that, thinking more about someone like Genie AI, it's the ability for me to use their product and for their product to reliably retrieve information without me potentially worrying that my boss is going to come back and I'm going to get sued for £1 million because there's 40% of hallucinations in there, you know?
Yeah,
And
and likewise, like
how have you guys managed to ensure that doesn't happen? I mean, that must be such a challenge in itself for legal tech.
I think it's still work in progress. Like we have lots of team members internally focus on evaluation of our solutions. So like we just don't build use off the shelf model and then do a bunch of engineering and then ship product, but we also are very much focused on quality and trying to assess the places where the solution is not working well or try to improve that by evaluating it. So we have like a rigorous evaluation strategy very much human led. Like we have hired a bunch of lawyers to kind of do that for us, kind of rate our AI systems and then feed back to our engineering and research teams. But at the same time, we also use a lot of large language model itself to cleverly evaluate at scale in testing time, but also in runtime when it's out there. We also try to make sure we are watching over our AI and then making sure the kind of suggestions, kind of output it gives is in line with certain parameters we have, which defines a good quality. And then I think it's very important to have constant eye over it because you can't just build it, test it once, and then ship it because these systems are very dynamic in nature and it's completely depend on what user is trying to ask from it. It's going to give that sort of result. So for us, it's like a couple of things. Like for us, it's very important to guide the user how to instruct an AI to kind of get the best out of it. So providing that sort of user experience. At the same time, for us, it's important to keep an eye and watch out for like any wrong things which it might produce, and then use that as a feedback loop to further improve that and not let it just blindly do things.
What stack have you built all of this on? Like, what is it kind of high level? Like, what's your
Yeah, so
foundation or all that stuff?
yeah, so we use a bunch of foundational model like all Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini all together for various kind of downstream tasks. We have recently built our agent platform, which essentially is our agent built on top of these foundational model, which is capable enough to take any kind of dynamic request and serve that. But in terms of technical stack, so we have got our whole app deployed on AWS, which is then in Kubernetes and Dockerized. All of our backend infrastructure is completely encrypted, REST and transit. So we deeply care about privacy, given we're handling such a kind of sensitive data about businesses. And then on front end is purely Next.js application. We do have a Python stack where that's where all of our AI magic happens with large language model. A very important point is we have also built our own editor where we kind of provide this sort of service. The medium for contract is basically editor. So rather than building on Word, we decided to be a bit more bold and then just do it ourselves. It's got some pros and cons. We are probably able to move a little bit slower, and it took us a good amount of years to get that maturity in terms of our own editor. But I think now we have some sort of advantage here where we can provide a lot more rich user experience, much more tailored for legal workflow, and at the same time have our agent operate on the editor just as if a human was doing. Our agent now can just do any sort of operation on the document, be it editing any part of the contract and the whole document, edit several places, create track changes, format the document, improve the formatting of the document and whatnot. So I think those quite technological investments early on we did, I think that is kind of paying off right now and is playing to some advantage for us. And I hope that will continue to do so.
Interesting. I've talked about this a couple of times recently. The difference between you talk about you own that workflow, and then you have the agent. For anyone that is maybe thinking about reimagining a workflow through building an AI solution, like, in your mind, what's the real difference between a workflow versus an agent? Like, because I feel like 18 months ago, no one mentioned the word workflow. And now it's like every second sentence has got workflow and agent in it. So I'm always curious to get everyone else's definition on these things, you know?
Yeah. To be honest, like 1.5 years ago, we started to build our own agents internally. Back then, it was pretty much not a normal terminology people were using. Like everybody was just more thinking about RAG and LLMs and building some sort of RAG pipelines. But back then, we started experimenting with agents. I think my definition of agents and workflow is like workflow is more of like it's a multi-step process. So you want to do certain activity and then you go through various stages of steps of things to do. So for example, if you wanted to hire an employee in a new country, you probably have to first of all do a really good research about the laws of that local country, whether I can employ somebody there, what are the options I've got to employ somebody there, whether should I be contracting or I can set up an entity and then hire, what are the details on it. Once that stage is complete, then you probably have to look at what legal documentations I need and whether it's and what sort of types of documents I need, whether it's just contract or a few more other things. And once that's done, only you have to then review and negotiate certain terminologies, make sure right wording is put into that based on the local jurisdiction and get it signed. So what I described there was like some stages it has to go through, that particular activity has to complete. That's one workflow. And there could be like several workflows depending on what domain, what industry, what work you're trying to do. I think the place where agent comes into play is the whole agency bit or the dynamicness of it, where an agent with LLM intelligence at the back of it is able to take and walk any sort of workflow which user is required to do. It's completely dependent on what user wants to do. It can navigate that sort of various steps to complete that task. And that's very interesting and exciting for us because in our domain, in our industry, there's no one way of doing certain things. It's very dynamic depending on what problem people want to solve, what business activities people want to do. The way to get there is like completely different. And if an agent can come up with a dynamic plan based on what user wants to do, and then achieve that plan, and then reason about as is achieving that plan, if it is able to kind of do a bit of research, do a bit of planning, do a bit of actions, as a result of that action, check if things are right, what is figure out, if not, how it can course correct, and then ask questions to user once certain things comes up. To me, that's like a perfect agent, which is like sensible enough to take its own steps and then figure out a way to accomplish certain piece of work. If there is more information required, it knows when to ask that.
So effectively, then moving on to another layer, LLMs versus agents. So what you're saying, so based on that description, which I totally agree with, LLMs could, in Genie's world, be seen as like the brain or the data, and then the agent's like the actor, right? You know, he's got out and he's got the memory, he's got the tools available, he's got the feedback loops, he can, as you say, perform operational tasks. Because I think, again, people that are maybe not as technical and are not involved in this world but want to know more, even the difference from an LLM and an agent, they could be seen as one and the same, you know?
Yeah,
But it's probably just playing a game of definitions, but we do that a lot in the tech world, don't we?
yeah. I think to me it's quite clear the distinction there. So like LLM is like the logical brain which has got the intelligence to interpret data and come up with an output which is highly intelligent, highly logical, and understands the requirement, looks at the data, and then gives you a result back. But that's just like one unit. Like there's an input that's got its reasoning and thinking and analytical skills, and then it's able to kind of give you a result output. It's not able to kind of do its planning, or is not able to kind of perform actions, and based on the actions, take next set of actions. And that's what people are now trying to build with agents, where like it is basically a recursion of LLM with more steps in it. So in agent, essentially you're just using LLM multiple times with multiple perspective. Like at some time you ask LLM to come up with a plan, then you ask LLM to do reasoning, then you ask LLM what actions should I take, and then that actions gets executed by accessing, like making tool calls. And then once those tools are called, it will look at the response of those tool call, whether it was success or failure. And based on that, the LLM would then interpret that and then plan next steps. So at core, we are just still using massively LLMs multiple times rather than one time, but it's just the whole orchestration of that multiple use of LLM in various ways is what agent is.
I like that. That really makes it super simple, but yeah, to the most simplest description, it's just using the LLM multiple times.
Yeah.
Which is you're exactly right. You know, it's when I think about the product that we've built, it's just doing that. It's doing the thing that I would ask ChatGPT to do, but it's doing it in the same breath. You know, it's doing it 5-6 things in the one off the back of one prompt now, and it's going into different parts of the workflow. So yeah, I think I'm conscious of our time here, and I kind of wanted to jump on to away from this topic and more back onto you guys, because a lot will have changed now. You've kept it quite a lean, small, mighty team for quite a long time, and then post LLM, I would imagine revenue goes through the roof. It'd be good to get a bit of insight into what your revenue was pre-LLMs to what it was post, and maybe that's the reason for the spike and all the scale. But now that you are scaling, what's changed internally? How has that affected you guys? What's that? How is it? Does it feel any different to pre-scaling?
Yeah, so I think even though like we are seeing great kind of growth curves recently post LLM and recently, especially after releasing our agent very recently. So I think pre LLM, I think it was a very different story. You're in different business. We're serving enterprise law firms, building solutions for them. But just before LLM came in, we switched our strategy to be on this side, which is end user, small to medium sized business, and legal or non-legal users can use the product. And we started like pretty much very generously at the start because it was behavior change. It was a lot to ask the industry to do, not to
Yeah.
use your lawyer, but just do it yourself. We kept it free for a very long time just to kind of get that traction, validation, and growth for us. And then recently, we kind of started to have our monetize our product by adding pricing plans or extended use because we couldn't just give away the whole LLM based product for free, especially because the cost was getting increased. So we
Yeah.
started to add pricing plans. And since then, and since our agent launch, I think we are seeing really great kind of growth curve, which is a kind of getting exponential. And at the same time, we're also seeing like so much of great tooling coming out from them like Cursor, Cloud Code,
Hmm.
Sigma Make, Zero. We are leveraging all of these tools a lot. And what it means is like traditionally, where as company gets bigger or as you kind of having more growth, you are kind of adding more team members, you're expanding as a company. I think the things have changed now. So like you could still stay lean and small as a team, but do achieve a lot more with the same set of people. So we are seeing right now where how a single engineer might be able to do more end-to-end work, uh, and then build end-to-end features because thanks to products like Cloud Code or Cursor,
Hmm.
they now have a lot more capability, a bit more beyond their comfort level as well. And similarly, in product and design, we are seeing a great convergence of product manager and designer kind of combining into one person, being able to do more end-to-end. So if you have a product manager who has got product mindset, who can take product strategy, convert that into a series of product features to build and make sure the revenue is growing up. Now they are also able to build quick prototypes, express their ideas by designing them in prototype tools, and then share that with the engineers, test that with users. So we're seeing like massive productivity gains for our teams, which also allows us to stay relatively lean. We're still hiring at the same time, but we are now a lot more strategic about what should be our next hire because industry is changing right now.
How are you thinking about hiring? Obviously, as a recruiter, it's a topic that I could talk about for hours. But I've noticed a shift. Obviously, we've all noticed a shift. I'm just curious. I'm always curious how people hire. On the one half of companies that I hire with, they want people from Anthropic and OpenAI and blah, blah, all these companies that raised $400-500 million. They were founded in 2017, big tech, FANG, all that stuff, and they want AI people from there. Very, very difficult, very, very expensive. So what do you hire for now? Have you changed it now to like, okay, early stage startup, we want that, but have you now just made it a first and foremost, like they have to have AI experience? They just have to have it.
Yeah, so we focus more on like how much an individual is able to learn and grow. Because if that's the core skill set, I think we really index on like how much an individual can learn and is autonomous and then very motivated to self learn and grow themselves. Because if that fundamental is there in an individual, then it's just a matter of like getting them in, giving them right goals, framework, and then letting them grow and then seeing them grow and learn. So we're not hiring for like people who have already got the skill set in AI, but really high potential candidates. And so far it's worked really well for us because in Genie we have like we focus a lot on cutting edge, like being really cutting edge, trying out all the latest tech and then tools and then build product with that to stay relevant and ahead of the curve as well. But that also gives enough challenge to our engineers and rest of the team members to kind of keep on learning at the same time and then deliver on that. So yeah, we pretty much hire from that perspective. I would say like, but the strategy has changed a bit in terms of we're no longer hiring for a single skill set person, which is like very specifically skilled. But
Mm.
so far now we are looking for people who are a little bit more um, horizontal or like have got a little bit more
hardcore generalists.
Yeah, more generalist. So not fully generalist where they cannot go deep into it. So it's more like
Mm-hmm.
immersion like a T-shape where we are specialist in one area, but also able to expand a bit more generally. Because I think with AI, I think that's a natural direction it's pulling you into where one person might be able to do a little bit more end to end. And then what that means is like you can have better collaboration. You will have less need to collaborate for the sake of collaborating with other people. And then individually you can do a lot more. And you only need to collaborate when it's needed to be, when you want to creatively think, brainstorm ideas, but not to get certain things done. You're no longer so much dependent on others as you might be in the past. So that's another angle. So to summarize, someone who's great at learning, great at adapting, as autonomous as possible, and have got a good sense, general skill set.
I think that leaves the door open for, it could be too wide, but ultimately, and the pattern I'm seeing is it's the strategy that you adopted before you changed it. Super niche. We will not deviate from these requirements, and that role doesn't get filled for 4, 5, 6 months, or it might never get filled at all. Or they hire the person, and because it's such a competitive market, because of that singular skill set in this AI race, they leave because they get crazy offers. I think the way you are, the organic way of hiring there, it opens the door up to a lot of underrepresented talent that should be spoken to. So that's great to hear. Final question, zooming out, 3 years from now, what does winning look like? Is it Genie, the intelligence layer, every contract touches, or is it something bigger than that? Yeah, what's on the agenda for the next 3 years? Obviously hiring, scaling the team, the product. Yeah, where do you see yourself?
Yeah. I feel like the speed how this industry is moving, 3 years is like a long time. And then maybe I might be wrong what I'm predicting now. But I feel like as from aspiration point of view, we definitely want to see Genie as like more technical stack for any business to operate. That's like a core fundamental legal technical stack for business to produce legal documents and then used by everybody in business who is interfacing with legal documents and legal processes as kind of not gatekept only by lawyers, and then allowing lawyers to be more strategic partners in the business to take more business initiatives rather than sitting on a desk and reviewing documents and building documents for the business.
Where are you operating in terms of geography markets? Are you just doing UK and Europe, or are you all over? Are you in the US?
Now we all like from day one when we switched our focus here, I think we are kind of addressing this like global.
Yeah.
So thanks to LLMs, that's pretty much doable. You're able to generate contracts in various languages as well. So I think from day one, we are pretty much global, although we have like hotspots where we tend to get more usage and
Where
probably
would
low
you say
usage.
most
I think
of
it's,
your revenue comes from?
yeah, I think it's more primarily US, UK, a
Yeah.
bit of India, a bit
Yeah.
of like Australia and South Africa.
Nice. Well, look, it's been really great to have this conversation, and thank you for joining and creating the space for us to do it. And I wish you luck with all of that and continued dominance. And we'll leave it there.
Thanks for inviting. It was a pleasure talking.
Thanks, Nitish.